and 6 p.m. in Riyadh. So we can
Gracias.
now.
We are now.
The National Autonomous University of Mexico is a university program of studies on Asia and Africa, UNAM United Kingdom, as well as the Embassy of Mexico in Saudi Arabia, welcome you to the webinar Gender, Economy and Culture in Saudi Arabia. I'm very pleased to welcome Professor Alicia Giron, who will welcome you all.
Good morning, Mexico, and good afternoon, Saudi Arabia. Well, we are very excited to have this webinar because since many months ago, we decided that our Mexican ambassador will invite this great woman that we have with us, and that we are very interested in know how how these women are working the gender issues in their country. So since I think there have been more than 10 times that we have meeting between Ana Elena, who is our representative, she represents us in the United Kingdom. So, and also our ambassador. So we are happy to have this webinar, whose title is Gender, Economy and Culture of Saudi Arabia. So welcome, and really thank you very much for what they say, Soraya, Salma, Fauzi, and we have an excellent friend of our program, who is Sarah Selkhovich, who will be running this conversation with all of you. Thank you very much. And okay, I give the floor, Vania.
Also, welcome Ambassador Aníbal Gomez, Ambassador in the Embassy of Mexico in Saudi Arabia. Please take the floor.
Thank you so much. Buenas tardes, buenos días, Masah al-Khair. I would like to start by thanking our today's three exceptional speakers, Dr. Soraya Obaid, Dr. Fosia Al-Bakr, and Salma Al-Rashid. Three Saudi women with vast and different experiences promoting women empowerment and gender equality in their country and globally. I also would like to recognize Dr. Alicia Giron, coordinator of the University Program of Studies on Asia and Africa at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, for giving us a space to showcase the developments in the field of gender equality in Saudi Arabia. I also appreciate the participation of Dr. Ana Elena Gonzalez, Dr. Sarah Sefcovic, the university and embassy team, and all the attendees. Thank you for joining us. Well, Saudi Arabia has made significant progress in recent years in terms of the gender agenda, with a special boost after the Kingdom's Vision 2030, which seeks to reduce the country's dependence on oil, moving towards a more inclusive and diversified economy. The empowerment of women and gender equality as a means to advance the nation's well-being are key aspects of Saudi Arabia Vision 2030 development plan. This explains a series of reforms taken by the government to increase women's participation in the labor market in both public and private sectors, encouraging them to have an active role in the Saudi society by assuming leadership positions in the country and creating their own businesses. Saudi Arabia has taken decisive steps to defend and protect the rights of women, and some important milestones are the criminalization of domestic violence and of sexual harassment, the possibility to obtain a driver's license, the removal of permits from a male guardian to open businesses and to obtain a passport and travel, and the permission to legally act as heads of a household, among others. It is important to highlight that the ongoing socioeconomic reforms in the country towards female empowerment have taken place during an unprecedented time of global challenges resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Times that have proven particularly hard for women all over the planet. There is a genuine desire within Saudi society, and this is what I see, to become more tolerant and inclusive, and the government is taking action to reflect it. There are still challenges ahead as everywhere, but I believe Saudi Arabia is in the right track. This is why today's conversation is so important. Even though Mexico and Saudi Arabia's diplomatic relation started almost 70 years ago, there are still challenges ahead between our societies, which, by the way, have several traits in common. So I encourage you all to pay close attention to this webinar, to know better each other and to know better our societies in terms of gender equality. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. After hearing our authorities, we will proceed to the academic webinar. I welcome Professor Sara Sefcovic, who will be moderating this webinar. Welcome.
Thank you, Vania. Good morning, everybody in Mexico. Good afternoon in London, and good evening, I think, in Saudi Arabia. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here today. I thank Dr. Alicia Giron from my university, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, for her invitation and the opportunity to participate in this webinar. It's also an honor to share it with the Mexican ambassador to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Aníbal Gómez Toledo, and the director of the Center for Mexican Studies from the UNAM in the UK, Ana Elena González. Of course, with the public, with the attendees, and especially with our speakers, Zuraya Obeid, Zalma Al-Rashid, and Fauzia Al-Bakr. I'm sorry for my Arab pronunciation. All of them well known in their countries and in the international arena for their work on behalf of women. Since we know we live in a world where you can find the information about them on the internet, I will always only say some of the relevant contributions to their fields. Dr. Obeid, which is going to be our first speaker, is the first Arab woman to head a UN agency. She started her career in 1975 and since then has been a member of the Commission for Western Asia, director of the Population Fund for Arab States, and in 2000 was selected by Secretary General Kofi Annan as Under-Secretary General. In 2020, she served as chair of Women 20 during the presidency of Saudi Arabia of the G20 group. She's also a member of the independent panel for the pandemic response established by the World Health Organization, which will present its report in May 2021. Some minutes ago, I received her speech for the commemoration of the International Women's Day at the 8th of March. I had no time to read it, but I'm sure it has something to do with her work on behalf of women. Her topic today is the economic role of women in Saudi Arabia before and after Vision 2030. Please welcome Dr. Zuraya Obeid.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sara, for your introduction. Thank you for inviting us to participate in this important discussion at a distinguished university. Special appreciation to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Mexico in Saudi Arabia, Ambassador Aníbal Gómez Toledo, who has been an active representative of his country in an admirable way, bringing the people of the two countries together. There is much that brings us together, including maybe long time ago, some blood relations. I shall not use all the 20 minutes allocated because I believe there has to be quite a bit of discussion that will be enriching to all of us. I examined the three areas of this meeting: gender, economy, and culture of Saudi Arabia. But it became clear to me that we cannot speak about gender in 2021 without reviewing the impact of a most dramatic event on women and their empowerment. That is the impact of COVID on gender equality and the empowerment of women. COVID-19 impacted all our lives and not only our health. It is not just a health crisis, but rather a social, economic, environmental, cultural, and even personal crisis with mental health consequences. We all know that all aspects of life, which means all aspects of the development of people and societies, are interlinked. This requires us to study societal challenges from a multifaceted point of view, because what impacts on one sector or institution by necessity impacts on other sectors or institutions. And what is relevant to one group of citizens would also impact on other groups. And thus, what impacts on men would also impact on women, and often more severely. This integrative and integrated policymaking is what is required to make decisions to deal with the multifaceted aspect of COVID-19 as it impacts women, which is the subject of our discussion. A gender-inclusive agenda should highlight the current empirical evidence of women's exclusion from the benefit of their economic activity and the urgency of ensuring the inclusion of women in decision-making tables, including economic governance. Investing in gender equality and closing the gender gap are a matter not only of fundamental human rights, but of sound economics or smart economics, as the World Bank has asserted many years ago. In particular, and this is looking globally, we have to stop treating economic policies as neutral in terms of their societal impact. Correcting the stark inequalities in economic opportunities for women, therefore, has the potential to generate more growth. It has been estimated by the Council of Foreign Relations that global GDP could grow by as much as $28 trillion, or 26% by 2025, if female participation in the labor market is increased to full parity with male participation. And that's why Saudi Arabia, one of the 2030 visions is to increase the participation of women in the economic sector, which Dr. Fawzia will speak about. Gender gaps persist globally in education, employment, entrepreneurship, and public life opportunities and outcomes, including in Saudi Arabia. However, globally, change is very slow, and significant gender inequalities persist even among countries that score relatively well in terms of women's participation in the formal labor market. There are pay gaps and women's legal rights and economic empowerment. Even taking into account significant differences among countries, with Scandinavian countries being the most female-friendly of all, women are paid less than men on average across 28 member countries of the European Union. Women's gross hourly earnings in 2016 were 16.2% below those of men and are underrepresented in leadership positions in many companies, international organizations, and non-governmental organizations. And here I can point out that the Ennahda Women Association has done a study of the private sector in Saudi Arabia, and they did identify that women in the private sector were paid less for the same jobs that are being made. Furthermore, women work longer hours as they take care of family members and often excluded from the labor market. In some countries, they have limited or have no property rights or access to finance. And these two, property rights and access to finance, are not an issue in Saudi Arabia, since we do inherit land and money and have access to an independent, as independent people to our finances. However, there are still more women than men in poverty in low and middle income countries, as well as high income countries. And many women remain excluded from the economic decision-making level. But even if the benefits of the economic gender inclusiveness are clear, the pace of change is very slow. At the current rate, it will take 2 centuries to achieve gender parity in labor market. In other words, gender will happen over many generations. Gender equality and change will happen over many generations. Policies to actively promote gender inclusiveness are therefore critical to building more robust, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive economies around the world. 2015 was a milestone for the UN Millennium Development Goals campaign as it transitioned to the 30 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the new Sustainable Development Goals. Among the targets within the SDG 5, the empowerment of women, are recognizing and valuing unpaid work and domestic work, ensure the full and effective participation of women at all levels of decision-making in political, economic, and public life, and giving women equal rights to productive resources, including land and credit. Active domestic policies are needed, and government must embrace credible policies to bring more women into the labor market, improve access to education and finance, including for women in the informal sector, self-employed women, and small and medium enterprises, close the pay gap, invest in social structure, especially childcare and assistance for the elderly, and support women entrepreneurs and ensure the coverage of social protection for all those who work in the formal and informal sectors. This is the situation without the impact of COVID-19. So what happened with COVID-19? Melinda Gates said, and I quote here, "History teaches that disease outbreaks expose and exploit existing forces of marginalization, seeking out fault lines of gender, race, caste, and class." A study by Accenture, one of the W20 knowledge partners, the title of the study, If Not Now, When? A Roadmap Towards a More Gender Equitable Recovery, Economic Recovery, says the following: "We stand at a critical junction in modern human history. The COVID-19 pandemic presents a stark choice: ignore the impact of the crisis on women and allow societies to become less equal, more divided and poorer, or help women to emerge fully recognized as equal partners and key economic actors, and in the process, boost the potential for faster socio-economic recovery." Key findings of this research tells us the following story. Women, this is since COVID, women have seen their earnings decline almost 2/3 more sharply than men, dropping by 16.5% on average since the pandemic began, compared with a drop of 10% for men. Mothers are spending an additional 1 hour and 20 minutes per day on childcare, an increase of 29%. The proportion of women with easy access to health care, including maternal and reproductive services, has dropped by more than half, from 69% pre-pandemic to just 32%. And half of women say levels of tension and stress in their households are high, up from just 16% pre-pandemic. More than 2 in 5 female respondents to a questionnaire believe their government has failed to account for the impact of COVID-19 on women. A number of studies repeated this information. Women made up a disproportionate percentage of workers in sectors and roles most impacted by economic downturns, which afforded less social protection. women comprise also 7 out of 10 health and social care workers. By 2021, an additional 47 million women were expected to be living on less than $1.9 a day as a result of the pandemic. However, women contributed $1.5 trillion to the global health economy even before these extraordinary times, and they continue to be a vital part of the healthcare infrastructure, battling the COVID-19 pandemic heads on. Women comprise almost 7 out of 10 health and social care workers globally. Given their predominant roles as caregivers within families and as frontline healthcare workers, women are more likely to be exposed to the virus. A number of studies have highlighted the devastating macro-level impact of COVID-19 on women. ILO reports that women are more likely to work in harder hit and higher risk sectors, such as healthcare, social and domestic work. And the UN analysis finds that women and girls have borne the brunt of school closure in terms of increased unpaid work and reduced levels of education, and gender-based violence is increasing exponentially. The gendered implications of quarantine must be acknowledged in service provision by recognizing that men's and women's different physical, cultural, security, and sanitary needs are very different. An estimated 243 million women and girls aged 15 to 19 worldwide have been subjected to sexual and or physical violence by an intimate partner just in 2020. Emerging data show that violence against women and girls has intensified since the outbreak of COVID-19. At the same time, women have less income, fewer opportunities for social contact, and limited access to services and community support, all of which give them fewer exit options. These risks are likely higher for women of vulnerable groups and marginalized communities, migrant and refugee women, and women with disabilities. Accenture reports also that online analytics show there is a 7% increase in discussion of gender equality issues between 2019 and 2020. I guess this is a good sign of people's awareness of this gender crisis. And we also are told that the erosion of female empowerment and poverty reduction threatens not only progress made towards implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the development agenda in countries across all the countries. Because gender inequality is multifaceted, there is no one solution to remediate the problem. The best approach is to utilize women's skill sets in multiple industries and settings and adjusting policy enforcement depending on technological, social, and economic development of nations. Macroeconomic policies need reformulation to include gender equality across all aspects, which include, but are not limited to taxation, employment, structural adjustment, opportunities, services, and income. This is the situation now. And some of it applies to Saudi Arabia, some of it does not apply because of the context of Saudi Arabia. If this is the situation now, the question becomes, what can be done? The W20 Saudi Arabia 2020 examined these changes in details and reached a set of recommendations which we submitted to the G20 leaders in November 2020. I leave this part to my dear friend and colleague Salman Rashid, who's the W20 Sherpa 2020 and head of the delegation of Saudi Arabia to Italy 2021, and with whom I had both the pleasure and the honor to lead W20. And the way we choreographed this session is that I talked about the global impact. Selma will talk about W20 as was requested, and the national dialogue that resulted out of the W20. And my dear friend and colleague Fawzia will focus us on Saudi Arabia, so you can see Saudi Arabia within a global context and not just Saudi Arabia in an isolated context. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Obeid, for your very interesting lecture, for your data, of course, but especially for me, for your idea of the smartness of including women in the economy, not only as a human right, but also as an investment in the economy, which is very interesting to follow and to understand. And now we're going to give the word to Dr. Al-Rashid, who is a Chief Advocacy Officer at Anatha Society, a non-profit organization interested in women to be active participants in the development of their societies. Prior to that, she was Chief Programs Officer overseeing development projects with a focus on women economic empowerment. She represents civil society at UN Human Rights Conventions, and since 2018, she has been head of the delegation at the W20 G20 engagement group and has represented her country in different meetings. Her topic today is the achievements of the W20 during the G20 Saudi presidency in 2020, in which she served as Sherpa. Please welcome Dr. Salma Al-Rashid.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sara. I am purely Salma, no doctor, but thank you very much. Good morning to Mexico, good afternoon to the UK, and good evening to Saudi. Thank you again, Your Excellency, Ambassador Anibal Toledo, and I'd like to thank the Embassy of Mexico in Saudi Arabia, the National University of Mexico, and UNAM in the UK. It's an absolute pleasure to be with all of you today. Allow me to share my screen and to get started. So it's a really absolute pleasure to be with everybody today. And I noticed from the chat that we have people even joining us from other places outside of the UK, Mexico, and Saudi. And this is the beauty of this virtual platform, that we can, despite, as mentioned before, the Pacific or the Atlantic or any ocean that divides us, we are here together. So thank you once again, Ambassador, for your efforts and inviting us to this discussion. So I would be giving you today an overview of I'll start with giving an overview of the G20 and W20. Then I'll get into the W20 in 2020 and the highlights of what was achieved during the Saudi presidency last year. And I'll end with a few points on how, as Dr. Threya mentioned, how we harnessed a global conversation to elevate the conversation at the local level. And I'd like to invite everybody who's listening in today to please share with us any thoughts or questions that you might have, and I'd love to respond to that towards the end. So just a quick reminder for those of you who might would like a refresher, the G20 is the premier economic forum. Mexico and Saudi Arabia are members of the G20 group of members. It's 19 countries plus the European Union. It represents 2/3 of the world population, 75% of global trade, and 85% of the world economies. And it's really because of past crises in the economies and financial crises that the G20 was established. And it's really telling that last year under the Saudi presidency, we had to lead this conversation during another pandemic and what followed with an economic crisis. Now, I'd like to also give my deep appreciation and wishes of success to our Italian colleagues who we handed over the presidency to this year. So the presidency is in Italy, and we're working very closely as part of the Troika with our Italian colleagues and our Indonesian colleagues for the year that follows. Now, the Women 20, or I must say that part of the G20, just a little bit of a background within the G20, it's a very complex system. But within the G20, and it's an economic conversation, but within the G20, there is part of that ecosystem, a group of what we call engagement groups, 8 groups that represent different fields, the business 20, civil 20, labor 20, youth 20, science 20. I hope I don't forget any of them, but a group of different topics. And these are independent of government, but represent different fields and different focus areas. But the G20 established this mechanism to provide these representatives of non-government with official channels to communicate with and influence the G20 leaders' discussions and the policies that end up in the leaders' declaration at the end of every presidency. Now, the Women 20 is part of these G20 engagement groups. It's a policy recommendation group, and it is independent of government. So members are independent of governments, but it is recognized by the G20 as an official group. So we are able to communicate and influence conversations inside the G20 unit. It was established under the G20 or the Turkish G20 presidency with a primary objective to ensure that gender considerations are mainstreamed into G20 discussions and ultimately translate into policies and commitments that foster gender equality and women's economic empowerment. Now, in 2020, under the G20 Saudi presidency, we had delegates. Every year there are a group of delegates. The delegates last year, like every year, are of an exceptional caliber. They represent business organizations, civil society, entrepreneurs, international organizations, and academia. And we come together to enrich the conversations and ultimately draft our communique or a list of recommendations that we believe collectively and based on consensus that these recommendations, if were adopted by the G20 leaders, will further accelerate women's economic empowerment. Of course, our work needs to be supported with further expertise. And as such, we worked very closely last year with a number of really phenomenal knowledge partners. You see it in front of you, the World Bank, Accenture, UPS, ITC, the International Trade Center, International Labour Organization, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Milken Institute, UN Women, and the OECD. And all of these helped support our work with providing evidence, data, and the latest research in a fast-changing environment. Now, our work would not be possible without the financial support and in-kind support of partners and sponsors. And also, I'd like to end with the most important role that was really our host organization. So Women 20 was hosted by An-Nahda Society, which I have the honor of being part of and working in. An-Nahda organization, as Dr. Thraya briefly mentioned, is a 59-year-old organization with a focus on women's empowerment. An-Nahda since the early 60s, and for anybody who's, or maybe Dr. Fawzia will get into a little bit of the Saudi context, but really the 60s were a very crucial time in Saudi, and a lot has happened since then. But since the 60s, the organization has been focused on women with a mission to ensure an environment that takes pride in women's participation, preserves their dignity, and builds their capacity to lead, to reach leadership positions. Now, in 2020, we established a framework to structure our work and what should be collectively working jointly with our delegates. And also I'd like to take the moment to send my wishes and salute our Mexican delegates who played a crucial role. One of our main working groups, the financial working group, was chaired by our delegate from Mexico, and they were really crucial in our work last year and this year. So typically W20 has 3 focus areas: labor inclusion, financial inclusion, and digital inclusion. So the 3 focus areas that you see in front of you at the top. Then the 3 at the bottom is what we become introduced every year. The G20 accountability, or focusing on accountability and monitoring, was introduced by our colleagues in Japan in 2019. And we believed collectively with our delegates, after consultation, that it is important to continue the work of accountability and really push for more accountability and monitoring of previous commitments that came out of the G20 leaders. And then we put women's entrepreneurship as a cross-cutting topic and introduced as a Saudi presidency topic the importance of inclusive decision-making, believing and realizing that decision-making and inclusive decision-making is really essential. We cannot move if we don't have women at every level of that decision-making process. Now, a quick snapshot of 2020, last year, we had 109 delegates actively engaged throughout the year. We had 100% representation of G20 members, 14 G20 meeting interventions. As I mentioned before, we, as an official group within the G20, we have the opportunity to intervene in different meetings and deliver the message of the G20 delegate, the W20 delegates. So we had that opportunity. We've issued 5 open letters really addressed to ministers and decision makers, calling for what the W20 collectively believes in, 5 joint statements, a number of publications, policy papers, webinars, and different interventions in the international fora. I will be sharing in the chat box a few links, and I'd like to invite everybody to visit the W20 Saudi Arabia website that has a lot of information and resources about our experience last year. We worked on a handbook that summarizes the Saudi experience, and we hope that this serves as a reference point to anybody who's interested in gender issues and how at the global and local level. Now, the W20 activities culminated by the virtual summit, and it was the first time the W20 hosts a virtual summit. And really, we missed a lot that feeling of having so many women come together in one place with a lot of energy in one room, but because of COVID, we had to settle for a virtual summit. But because it was virtual, we were able to have over 1,300 people attend the summit from 52 countries. So we were able to have more people represented at the summit. There were parallel sessions, high-level discussions, and a women's entrepreneurship or a women entrepreneurs marketplace to support small and medium enterprises, recognizing that they were hard hit by the pandemic. Now, as Dr. Thuraiya also mentioned, the main event of the summit was the actual delivery of the communique. Also, it is available on the website, and I'll share a link to that, to the communique itself. But really, the communique of 2020 had 2 sets of recommendations. The first one was on key measures to expedite economic recovery from the COVID pandemic. And our main message was the only way to recover from the pandemic is by ensuring a gender-sensitive response and by having women at the heart of recovery plans. We cannot go back to where we were. The pandemic gave us an opportunity to reset, and we provide G20 leaders with a roadmap of what needs to be done to ensure an economic recovery that delivers for all. And the second set of recommendations was towards a more long-term economic empowerment to ensure that we achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and to build a strong, sustainable, balanced growth. So what can we do so that we don't see ourselves in this situation ever again? And these recommendations were on legal and social reforms, inclusive decision-making, financial inclusion, labor inclusion, digital inclusion, and social entrepreneurship. Now, this is all nice, great. It's a train that passes in each, the G20 passes every year to different countries. We handed over to Italy in 2020, but then what? It was really important for Al-Nahda, the host organization of W20 last year, to question, what do we look like post 2020? It's important that when hosting the W20 should elevate the conversation at the local level. And as such, Al-Nahda hosted a series of local dialogues And it was the first time in Saudi that this is led by a civil society organization. And I must say that Al-Nahda has a UN ECOSOC consultative status. So we are recognized as a non-government organization in Saudi. We led these national dialogues across the kingdom in different cities. And we had over 100 experts participate in these discussions and over 700 people play an active role. And this was really a co-creative grassroots process towards having a list similar to the W20 communique that gives us the global perspective of what needs to be done at a global level, but this is at the local, national level. What is it that we need to do, and what is that roadmap? Now, the outcome of the national dialogue was a list of 39 recommendations on decision-making, labor inclusion, financial inclusion, digital inclusion, and women's entrepreneurship. I will share a link of that. We translated an executive summary in English, and it gives you a list of recommendations. But we also went deeper than what happened at the W20 global level, because we need consensus and it's a complex process. But at the local level, we said it's not enough to put a list of recommendations. What needs to be done? Who is the lead agency? Who's responsible? Is it the Ministry of Human Resources? Is it the Ministry of Finance, and so on? And what are our desired outcomes? So this is like a roadmap and for beyond 2020. And we're currently working on these recommendations and how can we make these recommendations a reality. And before I close, I just want to highlight and build on what Dr. Thuraya mentioned, is that it's really important to note that despite the pandemic and what we see globally, it disrupted everybody's lives, but it had a stronger impact on women worldwide. But what gives us hope as a civil society organization in Saudi is that the pandemic did not slow down reforms in Saudi. We continue to see reforms happening even in a difficult year like last year. And this is really important to keep in mind as we come into the discussion, that we it's easy to say, oh, let's sit back and relax. We're dealing with a pandemic and an economic crisis that follows a health crisis. So let's take a seat back. But really, we saw further reforms last year, and we hope that, as the ambassador said, these are important steps in the right direction. So I look forward to the discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Salma. I know you say you're not a doctor, but for us you are. Thank you for your interesting lecture, especially highlighting the importance of the G20. We don't know that. I mean, I didn't, and I think many people don't. And the non-governmental groups inside the group that work for specific interests, in our case, including women. And this is very, very good to know, so we can get to you when we have something to ask for. Dr. Fawzia Al-Bakr, our next speaker, is Professor of Sociology of Education at the College of Education at King Saud University, and she has been visiting professor at 2 US universities. She has published 3 books, many academic articles, and she also writes weekly for the newspaper Al Jazeera. She is an activist for women's rights and a member of local and international organizations and advisor to UNESCO in her field. Her topic today is cultural aspects in Saudi Arabia and their effect on women empowerment. Please welcome Dr. Fawzia Al-Bakr.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm really honored to be with you all, because this is a wonderful opportunity to see women and men from all over the world, especially with this pandemic. I thank especially the National Autonomous University in Mexico and the Embassy of Mexico Riyadh, especially represented by the Ambassador Anabel Gomez and his assistant, Mr. Santiago Cortez. I also I have the honor to be with you all. Dr. Thuraya, Salma, Dr. Elisa, Dr. Sarah, everyone. It's wonderful. I will share my screen. Yeah, share my screen. Okay. I should put it in full. 1 minute. I will have to stop sharing. I'll stop sharing a little bit and then because I want to put it in the mood. Okay. طيب. It doesn't work. Okay. Okay, it's all right. So I'll talk today. I will be talking, of course, about the impact, the cultural impact aspect in Saudi Arabia and its effect on women empowerment. Of course, Dr. Thuraya touched on the international. Salma talked about the G20 and the role that played by the civil societies. I will concentrate on the Saudi society because I think there are so many images actually that control the way that people view Saudi in general and Saudi women in specific. So we'll try to just put things in perspective for those who are attending with us this seminar. So Saudi Arabia, of course, Saudi Arabia is a young nation founded by King Abdulaziz in 1932, and this is, of course, the third kingdom. The first one was in 1744, and the other one was 1891. Of course, Saudi was built, by tribe and religion. So these two combination made the grounding to establish Saudi Arabia. So the culture and religion usually intact together. And sometimes it will make it difficult for the government or for anyone to introduce, changes, especially when it comes to women or social change. But I mean, Saudi today is changing. There are so many forces coming to us. So by there is the education, which well established for men and women. There is the globalization, there is the social media, also fast rate of birth in Saudi, which create this huge young population. We know that almost 65% of the population is at young age. Also traveling, studying abroad, also women starting to look for their rights and ask for their rights, write about it in the newspaper. Also other economic and social, of course, international factors. It's all produced, starting to, change these relation between religion and tribal and start to affect the traditional values and give more, different beliefs and needs for young population. Of course, I think our biggest thing happened to the women is the Vision 2030, which actually headed by our Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, supported by our King Salman. So Vision 2030, which was out in 2015, aiming to diversify Saudi Arabian economy beyond oil and gas, and promote private sector growth. So Vision 2030 look to men and women alike, but basically try to concentrate on women by trying to raise the participation of Saudi women in the workforce from 22% to 30% by 2030. Also, Vision 2030 invest in education, training, that's looking for the young generation, what's the job, what's the labor market needs, and of course they provide for early childhood education and trying to refine the national curriculum, training teachers, all that. And so they will be, so the school and the educational system will be able to first supply for this change in generation, and second, of course, being able to be part of the world and the need of the labor market. One of the, of course, I mean, when it comes to women education in Saudi Arabia, we can say without a doubt that women really biggest achievement is the almost eradication of literacy among girls. 97% of all girls at the age of the elementary school goes enrolled in schools. Education is segregated by gender, but free for all, up to the university level. Traditional education that was offered before Vision 2030 was opening jobs for women in limited fields like teaching, nursing, which aim to actually serve the female community. I mean, like, they need doctors, so they got the women to study medicine because they need them in the hospitals. They need teachers at the girls' school and so on. But gradually, of course, it's changing dramatically, and we will see that. In fact, the Human Capital Project, which is produced by the World Bank 2020, reported that Saudi Arabia spent 5.1% in 2008 of its GDP on government education. This is higher than both the regional average, which is 4.4, and the average for its income group, which is 4.5. Also, this report said that expected years of school in Saudi Arabia, it's actually any child in Saudi who starts school at age 4 can expect to complete 12.4 years of school by his or her 18th birthday. And this, I mean, 2020, the government spent 18.9 of its budget in education. So there is a huge interest in education with this young nation. In higher education, it's also a changing story from my time. When I was at the university, the specialties were very limited. So I was channeled to education because I have to teach, ladies like me in separate places. Nowadays, it's totally changing with Vision 2030. Saudi women have been attending university since 1957, but their education opportunities have grown, of course, remarkably in the last 15 years. This is one example. In 2005, there was a government-funded study abroad program that sent hundreds of thousands of girls and boys to all across the globe, to United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia. It was amazing. And my son and my daughter benefited from that. And now they're working. One is working in America, and the other one is working in Saudi. Saudi Arabia also, we have the first women college called Princess Noura University, which was founded in 2010. It can take up to 60,000 undergraduate students. It's actually the world's largest all-women campus. And the campus, by the way, is so beautiful. The school, the university itself aimed to give the female better access to male-dominated fields like medicine, computer science, management, and pharmacology. In fact, women in higher education in 2015, it was reported by the Ministry of Education that Saudi women in the undergraduate enrollment, actually they were more than the boys. there were 58% of university students was represented by Saudi females. This is Prince Noura University, and I wish if you ever come to Saudi, please do not miss visiting this magical university. I mean, like in every aspect. I mean, it has the most beautiful library I've ever seen in my life. One of the most encouraging aspects of the change underway in the kingdom is trend for women to study actually some of the specialty that's regarded as dominated by men. So there is a lot of push to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which and the so-called STEM discipline. For instance, there is 5,200 women graduated from Princess Noura University, and last year, 1,400 of them, they were in the STEM facilities. In a report by the Saudi Education Ministry in 2019, indicated that the women outnumbered men in graduation with a bachelor in biology, information technology, mathematics, statistics, and physics. So women are really studying, you know, for better vision and better employment. When it comes to employment of women in Saudi Arabia, traditionally, as I said, like me and others, Saudi women worked in jobs served female communities such as schools, banks, hospitals. Well, Vision 2030 changed this perspective by providing an equal opportunities for both sexes. With some, actually, there is some positive discrimination in favor of women, that is to close the gap between men and women in public and private sector. Vision 2030 seeks to raise, as we said, the participation of women in the labor market from 22 to 30. And not only that, actually, which is very surprising, that even to the military, the Ministry of Defense now allow women to apply to the military for boys and you know, girls to apply as they wish. There are a lot of initiatives done to actually help women to in their employment. For example, the initiative of Children Hospitality Service for working mothers, which called Qurra, help women, you know, so in the so they can find a trusted place to care for their children. They have also the female transportation program, which called Wasil, which gives women, you know, free transportation from in and out the job. There is the initiative of remote work program. There is the wage protection system. So there are so many. Actually, I just give some of these examples, but there are hundreds and hundreds of initiatives to support women in the labor market. I'm going to talk also about a study done by the National Observatory for Women at King Saud University, and I encourage you, whoever care about women in Saudi Arabia, go to the this moves to Princess Noura University, because it's headed by the president of Princess Noura, Dr. Inas Al Isa, and it's one of the most scientific observatory I've ever seen. I watched and the birth and how they did the pillars. So it has 5 pillars: economics, education, health, and it has so many indicators. And in their study, they try to find all the facts about the 5 pillars. Or for economic pillars, for example, of course, they go to they found that has the value, the full value is 1%. So the economic pillars for Saudi women has a value of 0.42, showing that 42 of the gap between women and men in their participation in economic development is closed. They did also in 2019, they did a huge survey around all Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is 13 the administrative districts. So they did a survey to get the missing information, especially in regard to the social and economic pillars. And this is the results of this study. For the gender gap in the government sector, it's closed by 24, which can be interpreted as that for 100 male working in the government section, there is 24 women. The gender gap in running small and medium-sized entrepreneur is closed by 44. Of course, in the public sector, we have to say that there is no difference in the wages. I consider to work in a government because I work at the university. So whatever I get, whatever my male partner gets, I will get the same. So we have a same scale. This is not the case, of course, for the private sector. The social pillar has the value of 0.65. As the value gets closer to 1, the socioeconomic environment is more supportive of women participation in development. 85% of Saudi women have social media affiliation, and 97% of Saudi women have support and belong to social network of support in times of crisis. 26% of Saudi family are headed by women or partly supported financially by women. And actually there was a study that I was reading today, and it raised this to 20% that actually the women support financial, the women support their families. Also, the educational pillars has the high value, of course, of 0.92, which implies no gender gap in primary or intermediate or secondary or higher education. There is really no gap between men and women. However, the gender gap in intermediate diplomas and in technical and vocational training, and it's closed by only 21. The health pillar is at value of 98, which shows that women health aspects are not obstructing them from fully participating in national development. In fact, healthcare is provided free for all residents in Saudi Arabia. And if we watch the educational pillar, and the health is the highest because the government really pay a lot of attention to these pillars. Gender equality, actually the report from the World Bank, which is 2021, indicate that gender equality is fundamental human right. It can boost economic growth and improve development outcome. So the Women, Business and Law study of 2020, which produced by the World Bank, said that actually Saudi Arabia got 70.6 points out of 100, a dramatic increase from the previous score of 31.8. So Saudi Arabia was the country to mark the biggest improvement globally since 2017, according to this report. The study also found that the kingdom enacted reforms in 6 out of 8 indicators associated with women economic empowerment from June 2017 to 2019. This is Al Ula. I hope you visit when you come. It's one of the most beautiful cities in north of Saudi Arabia. There are so many reforms, which I think it's really breaking. But of course, the first definitely is the women, being able to drive. Maybe this is just sounds so usual for other. But for us, it was wonderful. September 26, 1917. I don't think any Saudi woman would forget this because it marked the historical day when we were able to get our driver license and drive as we wish. And now I have my own driver. Of course, I had my American driver license before, but now I am proud to have the Saudi one as well. A report done by Bloomberg Economics suggested that actually allow women to drive in Saudi could bring more than 90 billion the kingdom economic output by 2030. And according to this report, just by driving, that will increase, of course, the number of women seeking jobs, the size of workforce. Of course, also don't forget it will enhance the access of women to training, and also that's the survey itself found that women were very supported, and 82 of them were wanting to drive. Of course, that will gradually change the traditional role of women in Saudi and give them hopefully upgrade to higher paying jobs because they can drive and they can choose a lot of places even away from the home. Also get training and so on. So it's all an input to women empowerment. In August also 2019, it was announced, some of the reforms, it was announced that women above 21 would no longer need permission from a male guardian to travel abroad or obtain a passport, which means actually the guardianship system was collapsed, thank God. And so also there are so many, actually I'm giving you some of the examples of the change in the language of the law. And if you want, I took it from the sheet fact produced by our embassy in Washington, D.C., which headed by our first female ambassador, Princess Rima bin Sultan. So if you want the full sheet fact, you will find it there. But it's just so interesting to find, I mean, like before, the law would say the husband must report to the director of civil with 60 days of marriage. The new, they said the husband and wife may request to obtain family card and so on. So these just an examples of the, of course, now women are being leaders in different actually occupations. They are also working in legal professions, have opportunities in public prosecutions offices. They are in the Human Rights Commission, they are in Shura Council, and in so many places. There are, as the ambassador have mentioned, the Protection Act for women in the workplace and also for children in the area of marriage. Also, women can, head the household, they can live alone. I mean, like really amazing things. Also political, of course, engagement by, Shura Council, being Deputy Education Minister, also at the municipal election, participated in the municipal election in 2015, and so on. There are so many things. So this is just, a brief and quick picture of women in Saudi Arabia, and we're open for question, of course.
Thank you very much, Dr. Al-Bakr, for your interesting lecture about the new forces emerging in your country aiming at social and cultural changes, which is something we also face in Mexico and I'm sure in many other countries. For 1 hour, we listened to very interesting lectures about women in Saudi Arabia presented by 3 renowned activists and scholars. We have some minutes left if you have questions for them, so please feel free to ask and I will gladly read those questions for our speakers. But first of all, I'm going to ask Dr. Alicia Giron if she wants to comment something about what we just listened to. Dr. Giron.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, first of all, it is amazing the conversation that we are having right now in this moment, especially because when Soraya was talking about all the gender gaps in Arabia, I was just thinking that it is the same in Mexico. It is the same situation, and especially more violence, more hours at home for women, everything she was saying point by point, it was like talking about Mexico. So we are very close in these two countries, especially in gender gaps. And I would like to say something. I immediately went to the Global Gender Gap Report of the Forum Economic Davos. And since 2 years, well, I used this report since the first time in 2006. And we have moved from the 75 to the 34 right now. But when you see if this has been if we are in a better situation, we are not. I am an economist, and I know very well how economists play with the numbers. And sometimes you can see that there is a development, but when you see the macroeconomic indicators, it's very different, the situation. In this global gender gap, you were in 2026 in the 114 level, and then you pass 2021 to 147. And then we were, I already said, from 75, and now we are in 34. But how do we move? And if we see the 4 global gender gaps that this report uses, is because most of our women are in the parliament. And the question is it good or it isn't? Having many women in the parliament doesn't mean that they are going to have a gender view in the political economic decisions. And this is one of the most important things, that when a government has the vision, a gender vision, it is going to improve very fast. And all the things that you have mentioned about how you are improving, this data that Fauci has given us, that your gender, the 18.9% in education, this is great, because you are going to move very fast. And when the women or the girls are having a big education, and they are going to the university or the college, this is going to improve your society. So you have told us many interesting things. And of course, it is very important also that you have developed the task force. That I think there are 8 task force that they were. I had the opportunity to be I was invited to be in Argentina. And I'm very close to these tasks. I am reading a lot. It is one of my issues. I'm specialized in financial crisis, but I always see the gender. So sometimes I don't know which is best to see economy or to see the gender. But the impact of the economic policies of our governments, the impact is immediately in the micro level, and especially in the family units. So I would like to continue talking, because really I am very happy to have this conversation. And one of the things that also Salma has said, well, after all of this conversation, well, what do we have to do? Who has to do? And and the roadmap. And I think we have to make more, we have to improve more the G20, because the thing that we have to change from now is that we have to change the economic policies, especially during the last decade. All the central governments decided after the financial crisis to have austerity budgets. And that was the worst decision that they have made, because when COVID arrives, then you don't have hospitals, you don't have care economy. So that, I think that the moment is now, and we have to improve care economy. And I am trying to finish a book about gender, and many works that I have done during the last years, is that we have to, the other word is life economy. In Spanish is economía de la vida. I don't know if it is correct, the translations, life economy. And care economy, it is very important in our economic policies. It doesn't give pollution, care economy, but care economy, it's not only taking care of the children, taking care of your parents. Care economy is more than that. It's having access to water, it's having to have a better life, to have a better nutrition, to leave poverty. So I finish with these words because I want to continue. I'm very excited. Thank you very much. And okay, Sarah, I give the floor.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I suggest, if you agree, that we read a couple of questions all together and then the three of you answer whatever you want to. And then if we have time, we can go to a second round of questions. Do you agree? I have questions and then I will read the ones that are arriving. For Dr. Thoraya, what do you think about the proposal that feminists in the West are making since many years ago about salary for homemakers on paid work? For Selma, what can we do to improve the participation of women in decision-making, which is something you stressed very, very much. And for Fauzia, I want to ask you, I'm sorry for not knowing, who makes the reforms that you just explained? Is it the king? Is it a religious body? Is it a group of lawmakers? Because as you know, we have different ways of doing that. In Mexico, we have a parliament, but I don't know how do you work in Saudi Arabia. Those are my personal questions. And now I'm gonna read for you some of the questions that just arrived. Well, we have greetings from many places, from Argentina, from the UNAM in Mexico, from Brazil, from France. Thank you, all of you who are in the Zoom. Brenda Mireles, greetings from the Mexican Observatory on Feminist Foreign Policy. This is a very interesting and important conversation. Thank you for sharing. Paola Valencia, shalom, salam alaikum to all of you. She asks, how difficult is for foreign women to work and travel in Saudi Arabia? How effective is justice in Saudi Arabia over sexual harassment, violence against women? And after the gender reforms of 2019, as she says, promulgated by King Salman Al Saud, how was the social and political impact over that reform? Sandra Medina asks, Professor Fauzi showed that in the government sector, there are 24 women per 100 men. Which positions are the women occupying? Can you comment about the salary gap in equivalent positions? Adelaida Levavasseur from Zoom asks, I was also wondering about the possibilities and conditions for foreign women to study and work in Saudi Arabia. And another question, free healthcare for all was mentioned. Is it the case only for Saudi nationals? What about foreigners of other nationalities born in Saudi Arabia? And Alexa Trejo from El Salvador, how do Arabi-Saudi cultural patterns affect the integration of gender equality? And what are the challenges to face in the actual process of women's empowerment in the country? Is there any political, I suppose, political opposition? And I'm going to read the last one so you can begin your answers. Very interesting seminar. My name is Cristina, and my question is, since the changes in Saudi Arabia have been many and have been so fast, is there any training, education, or program for Saudi men to understand or support women in these new power positions? Please, Dr. Obaid, you want to begin with the answers?
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting questions. But I'd like first to converse with Alicia. I want to respond to her on a few points. In the Saudi Shura, I was a member for I was among the first 30 women who were appointed in Shura in 2013. I served for 4 years. The decision by the king was not less than 20%. So they can go less, they can go up, but not less. And so, and it was a very interesting experience. It's the first time for us as women to enter into the Shura on an equal basis with men. It took a while for us and the men to get to work together. The men have a floor, we have a floor. After the first year, we were in both each other's floors. So it was quite a change in more than one way. The other interesting part that also relates to what you asked, Alicia, is the municipality election that Dr. Fawzia mentioned. When women were allowed to run for elections, we really thought we will get 2, 3, because we know from other developing country experiences, the first run for women in municipalities are not many. We got 22. So it was a big surprise for us, which meant that there was support, and many were not elected by women, they were elected by men. It's a very interesting analysis of what brought that about. And they proved to be much more active in the municipality committees because they know communities and they know their people, etc. The issue Dr. Fawzia mentioned, and you mentioned it as well, you know, yes, we do have women graduating in the digital area more than men. What we need to find out, where are they employed after they graduate? Are they in the areas of graduation, what they studied, or are they in the back office support? It's an interesting area that needs to be looked at. Globally, women, according to the work we did for the G20, globally, women, even if they are specialized in digital technology, are often not included in the production of technology. They are the processors. But in the demand of the W20, we want women to be included in the production of products, of digital applications, etc. Because we discovered that within the algorithms of the digital world, there are biases included there. You know, by coding female and male, you get different responses. So there was a push or a recommendation that women will be included as producers of digital technology as well. You also mentioned the issue of economics, and recently the IMF director, Kristalina Georgieva, has been giving different language about economics. She is beginning to talk about economics with a human aspect. And I think it's very important to build on the IMF and to push as member states, the IMF to go that way. She's talking when she addressed the W20 meeting, she mentioned something. She said, just as we are talking about the environment and relationship to the GDP, we need to look at gender as well and so on. So the IMF is having a new language. And as an economist, I hope that you would follow up on that and see where you can push us there. The care economy is quite important, and my role within the independent panel for pandemic preparedness and response, and I have put a link on the chat. It has lots of references on many of these areas, but the care economy is very much a priority there. The question to me was, would I consider the salary for home care? And I'll tell you, I'm a bit of a storyteller, so forgive me. In 1978, we did a workshop when I was at the Economic Commission for Western Asia. We did a workshop in Syria with the Ministry of Planning. And it was about costing the home activities of a woman at home. How much does it cost? And how can it be an input into the national economy? So obviously I believe in it because it is a cost and it needs to be accounted as part of the national accounts. So it's a very important there. I think the healthcare issue, yes, healthcare is open for all, those who work for all Saudis and expatriates who live, for example, expatriates, if they work with the private sector, they have health insurances that pay for it. But for example, now the vaccine is available to everybody, expatriates or nationals, free of charge. And it's all over the place. You can get it anywhere. Finally, one last comment is that when you listen to Fawzia and Salma and myself, and when you look at us, I think we are kind of a 3 generations or maybe 2 generations speaking to you. I always say, and Salma knows that, I always say that when I am with my sisters from Saudi Arabia, I always say I am the dinosaur in the room because I was born pre-oil. So I saw the movement of Saudi Arabia I'm 76. So I've seen Saudi Arabia from no oil to slow changes to fast changes. I've lived it all. And I think this is the thing you need to understand in Saudi Arabia, that changes, because as Dr. Fawzia said, it's a tribal society. There was an alliance between the tribe and religion. Change was premeditated, it was slow, it was evolutionary. You know, they make a change and they wait to see the reaction and then they do another change. What happened recently is no more waiting. It's young people making decisions, move. So the history of Saudi Arabia has changed with the present administration or the present ruler, the king and the crown prince, from a very slow evolutionary process into a much faster, still evolutionary, but a much faster process. I'll stop here and I give it to my colleagues.
Salma, please.
Thank you very much. So I'll also go back to Alicia's point on the G20, and really I agree with you. You know, the G20, and I love the surprise that people get when I tell them all of what we're doing at the G20, it's non-binding, and people's faces are like, what? All of this work and it's non-binding, then what's the point? But it's really important that's why the national conversation is really important. What our delegates and our colleagues across the G20 take from this conversation and bring back home on the ground is important. That's why the national conversation is important, because then we have something. So one of the reasons why we were involved with the Women 20 since 2018 is to use that as an opportunity to elevate the conversation. We come back home and we say, the leaders, and ours included, agreed on this. How can we turn this into action on the ground? So really, this is one way to push for action and accountability and moving moving into action. On the point, Dr. Sara, on your question on what can we do to improve participation of women in inclusive decision making, I will say something that I know is a bit controversial, but I really believe in quotas or targets, even if for a temporary time, for a limited time, but it does help. We need to get, we need to get more women in. I do believe that we need to have people in positions based on merit, for sure. But then also there are certain fields where if we don't put these quotas, we won't have representation in these positions. So quota could be one way. We have a lot of capable women in Saudi Arabia and around the world, and we know that representation at the decision-making level, at a high level around the world, is still low. Among the G20 leaders, we only have one woman. So we really need to, push for that. And it's many things, but one thing, because I am aware of time, I would say quotas and targets.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Fawzia.
I think there is a very limited time left. I think Dr. Soraya and Salma, they said most of the answers, but I just one of the questions that at the social level, these reforms, does it change the the face of Saudi Arabia? Yes, it did. Yes, we're much happier people now. People are feeling free and secure. And you know, the reforms are done by the king and the MBS, and also the Shura Council and all that. So health, of course, I mean, like health services is free. Yes, you can come and visit Saudi and work, whether you're, I mean, a man or a woman. There is no more, you know, old, very traditional Saudi. We are in the new generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fauzia. Sadly, time is over. I really feel very bad because we were looking forward for this debate between us, but time is over and we cannot discuss anymore. There are many questions here, very interesting, some of them, but they will remain unanswered, at least for today, for our webinar. We have to close it, and please, the final remarks will be made by Dr. Ana Elena Gonzalez, Director of the UNAM in the UK. Please welcome Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sara. Well, it has been an enormous pleasure to listen to all of you and to read the questions. The fact that we are so so enthusiastic about sharing our different experiences from our different perspectives is a very good sign that this is only the beginning of a dialogue, hopefully, among women and men from many different countries. I would like to thank our speakers very heartily, Fauzia Al-Bakar, Salma Al-Rashid, and Dr. Thoraya Obaid for your excellent presentations. And to thank Ambassador Aníbal Gómez Toledo and Santiago Cortés, because they did a wonderful job in locating you, and you are excellent exponents. So thank you very much, Ambassador Aníbal and Santiago Cortés, for this excellent job. And also my congratulations to my excellent colleagues as well from PUEA, from the University Program for the Study of Asia and Africa, Dr. Alicia Giron, Vania de la Vega, and all the team, also all the team from UNAM UK. Without all of you, this would not have been possible. I think the world is getting smaller, and it is a new responsibility that we use these technologies to favor the cause of women, and I think this kind of webinar helps a lot for that purpose. Thank you to all attendees, both within the webinar and the Zoom room, and also in social networks who have been following us. And we hope you keep in touch. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you all. See you.